Call to order the City Council meeting of July 5th, 2018. Please rise for invocation by Councilwoman Bonnie Katz, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance.
We are celebrating our Declaration of Independence this week, and with that comes fireworks and everyone proclaiming to be a proud American. As we celebrate, we cannot forget those that came and gave so much so we can celebrate our freedom. Our forefathers fought with passion for us. They fought for God and country. So let us thank God for all that He has given us and a wonderful country that we live in. On the 4th, our city came together so all of our citizens could celebrate. We thank our police, fire, streets and parks, and emergency services for making this another great event. These departments take such pride in what they do, and please know you are much appreciated. We also thank our Lord for keeping everyone safe. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, Mrs. Katz. Next item on the agenda is approval of City Council meeting minutes dated June 21st, 2018. Can I have a motion and a second to approve those minutes?
So moved. Second.
Are there any comments or questions? Hearing none, Mrs. Frank.
I don't know where to start.
We're all to the right here tonight.
Mrs. Katz.
Yes.
Mr. Slaughter.
Yes.
Mr. Allison.
Yes.
Dr. Williamson.
Yes, and those are approved. Next item on the agenda is limited courtesy of the floor. We've had no requests for that this evening, so we'll move on to ordinance and final reading for the 6-year capital budget. Mrs. Frank, in short form, please.
Should I read it?
Yes, please.
An ordinance adopting a 6-year capital budget projects for the City of Williamsport for fiscal years ending June 30th, 2019 to June 30th, 2024.
Thank you. Can I have a motion to approve this ordinance and final reading?
So move.
Second.
Hearing a motion and a second. Mr. Nichols, how are you this evening?
Fine, thank you, and good evening to everybody. Hope you had a great 4th. Fireworks were great. Again, this ordinance before you is on second reading, and it's the city's proposed 6-year capital program. As you know, and I've said before, it essentially serves a planning tool for the city of Williamsport, with the first 2 years structured to be more of an action plan. It also satisfies River Valley Transit's regulatory requirements. The Planning Commission at its last meeting reviewed the program and provided a positive recommendation to council. And the total program is approximately $80 million, again, with the first 2 years, the priority projects. So I'll defer back to the chair for any questions.
Thank you very much. Any comments or questions from members of council? Hearing none, Mrs. Frank, on the ordinance and final reading.
Mrs. Katz.
Yes.
Mr. Slaughter.
Yes.
Mr. Allison.
Yes.
Dr. Williamson.
Yes, and that ordinance is approved. Thank you, Mr. Nichols. Next item on the agenda then is a resolution authorizing the execution of an agreement between RVT and Delta. Mrs. Frank.
Resolution authorizing the renewal of a consulting agreement between River Valley Transit and Delta Development Group, Incorporated.
Thank you. Can I have a motion and a second to approve this resolution?
So move.
Second.
Hearing a motion and a second. Mr. Nichols.
Thank you again. And this resolution authorized the renewal of a professional service agreement with Delta Development for a period of 18 months. As indicated in the agreement, Delta will provide services for RVT in the city on 6 different tasks outlining the scope of work. The tasks range from seeking funds from various state sources to fully implement the 3rd phase of our Connect Williamsport project, and that focuses on the 3rd Street Gateway project. So far, 7 different grants have been obtained for the project, with 4 grant applications in process. Also, Delta has assisted us in getting local funds as well for the city and Lycoming College, and most recently, announcement from Lycoming Economic Development Foundation provided an announcement and a significant amount of money for local match purposes. Also, Delta will pursue federal funding opportunities through the Federal Transit Administration. Delta will continue to work with the city and provide tremendous assistance related to existing RACP contracts and also a potential new award. Technical assistance will include RACP compliance and closeout activities for the current grants, and also development of a full application if needed, which meets RACP regulations, and also special conditions which are provided from the state so that we have everything in compliance. And also, they're going to give us technical assistance for all the various state grants that we've obtained so far, or will get for the Third Street project. And then the last, and as important as well, is Delta will provide coordination with Lycoming College, PennDOT, and other stakeholders in this Third Street project to advance Lycoming College's investment in the overall Gateway project. And as I understand, there's a groundbreaking this coming Monday, which is exciting news and a significant part of the Third Street project. The funding for the project, or for the professional service contract will come from RVT in the city, as budgeted in the current 2018 budget, and it will be proposed, the remainder of the funding, in the 2019 budget. It was reviewed by the Finance Committee earlier this week, so again, I'll defer back to the chair for any questions or comments.
Thank you very much. Mr. Allison, for
Yeah,
Finance.
Yes, we did review this in finance and talked about a lot of these issues. We spent a good deal of time on the financing and the implications for us, which would be $52,000 this year from the city. Is that correct, Mr. Nichols?
Correct.
And then next year, 2019, the city's portion would be about $105,000.
That's correct.
And that's correct. So since it's an 18-month agreement, we're committing to next year now, and that should be clear up front. As far as consultant money, I just happen to think, and I think we all thought about last year at budget time, at the budgeting stage, we just put money in for consultants, but then had to divide it up later. We're making a commitment now to that block of money. I think we need to be clear about that up front, that the administration is recommending that. So that's what we're going with.
Just
If we
one
go-
quick comment on that. There is, as required by federal compliance issues, there is a 30-day out. So if for some reason it would be necessary to, to close out the contract earlier, there is that provision.
Right. So,
The other thing that we did discuss, oh, I'm sorry, are you finished?
I can come back. No, go ahead. Go ahead.
The recommendation before you.
Recommendation?
Yeah.
Yes.
We passed the full body council with a positive recommendation.
Thank you. Mrs. Katz.
My train of thought now. The other thing that we discussed, yes, is that we're going to get updates continuously of what's going on with some of these funds, and we also talked about the closeouts with the audit with, where's that page at? The compliance closeout for William Street and redevelopment project, we're still working on that with the audit, and we're also working on a closeout with Destination 2014, which just seems so strange that we're talking 2014. But the audit, you said, will be, it's it's done. It's just a matter of the papers coming back, right?
Yeah, the William Street project, is pretty much closed out. And when we received all the funding, there's still a little bit of retainage from the Bowman Field project, and also the Trade and Transit Center project is close to being closed out as well. The first Bowman Field project, and now we're seeking some additional funds to finish the Bowman Field commitment or 4-year capital program. And so we've completed 3 of the 4 years, so we're trying to finish that up.
It'd be great to get those off the books, because we're starting so many new projects at this point with funding. Other than that, I think that's what we covered, isn't it? I
Pardon
think
me?
that's all that we had that we covered.
Yeah,
answered most
in
of our
general
questions.
terms, we also talked about in the contract, that the travel expenses are not included, monthly travel expenses. That's on page, well, it's under 4C, 4B and C. So there are incidental reasonable expenses that might be incurred. The other thing is, oh, I'm having a brain freeze. Mr. Nichols, we talked about that we have encumbered money for consultants. And
We have what, I'm sorry?
encumbered money.
Yes, this year, as you stated, we had a budget of $150,000, and another consulting firm was approved for $100,000, which left a balance of $50,000.
Yeah,
So RVT has been picking up the cost prior to this new contract commencing this month, or was it June 1? But anyway, we've been picking up the costs until the balance equaled what their contract called for.
right. Yeah, I already said we passed it to the full body council.
Thank you. Other comments or questions?
I know you said 52,000 for this year, but if you do 17.5 times 7, that's 122,500 if you do June 1 to December. So for 2018, that'd be 122,000.
Well, it would be 6 months times half of 17.5. What is that?
June 1 to December? Through December, right? We're going through?
Yes.
So June,
Yes,
July,
yes.
August, September, October, November, December? Is 7, I think, but unless I'm not adding that right.
52,000 at the
Do we all mean July 1, by the way?
I think this
I think it says 1st of June,
Yeah.
yeah, so,
Minus
But
the
half
50,
of that times
minus
7.
the, well, yeah, we have the 50,000, and then, so that's 72.5, so half of that. I mean, I'm just trying to see the numbers. I mean, they're not adding up exactly
Whatever.
to me.
well, at the Finance Committee, it was the number 52 is what we're using, so anything over that would not be the obligation of the city. I understand what you're saying.
Right, I'm just, and then for 2019, I'm just going off the 17.5.
Right,
For the remainder of 2019, that'd be 192,500. I mean, the total contract would be 315,000. We gave Penn Strategies 200,000, that's $515,000.
well, the city would only be half of that.
Right, no, I know, that's what I'm trying to, because it's 150 is what we had budgeted. 100 goes to Penn Strategies, that leaves 50.
Right,
And in 2019, the total contract would be 192.5. 50,
half and half, yes.
right, which is more than what we have. I mean, significantly more.
Well,
Let me clarify.
again-
I'm just
RVT will
trying, I
be
mean-
RVT, which of course is part of the city, but the general fund will be splitting the contract. Is that correct? Yeah.
But the
Does that
thing is.
answer your question?
No, I think the scope, I think what he's asking is pertaining to the scope of work. Delta does similar work the Penn Strategy does, only in the areas that we, just discussed. But the other thing that they do, which is significant, is the administration of the grants. They essentially are providing administration for 4 RACP grants. And I can tell you that contracts for to a consulting firm just for one RACP project can be $50,000. So they provide tremendous assessment. If you're talking about 4 RACP grants, that's a tremendous amount of work. I mean, with our limited staff and finance, we don't have the capability. I mean, we do what we assist, obviously, Delta, but they do a tremendous amount of work as it relates to RACP. So they provide not only front-end services in terms of trying to seek funding opportunities, but they also provide the back-end administration services. So it's much more than what we're asking Penn Strategies to do.
Right. No, I'm not doubting their work at all. I just am asking if we get tied into a contract, how are we able to fund from a city's perspective. I mean, if you take half, it's 36,250 for the remainder of 2018, 71,250 for 2019, which would be 107,500, but we had 150,000 budgeted.
For this year, right?
Right, 100 went to Penn Strategies, and then next year, I'm assuming it's about 150 that's going to be budgeted. 100 of that will go to Penn Strategies because we already approved $100,000 to go to Penn
Right,
Strategies.
for this year, right.
Well, that's a 2-year contract, I believe, Penn Strategies was, wasn't it? That's a 2-year contract, right? Yeah, so that's another 100,000 next year to Penn Strategies.
So it would be the consulting service contract, I envision being then around $200,000 on the city side, and then we'd have the remainder. So it would be an increase if that's what you're suggesting.
Well, yeah, well, no, what I'm not suggesting anything. I'm just trying to figure out if we approve it tonight, where the funds are coming from, from a city
Well,
standpoint.
that would be from, again, the administration would be proposing that in the 2019 budget, and we would have to obviously provide a balanced budget and provide, how we're funding various things.
So we have to vote
But
tonight.
that's why, if there's situations where there is an issue with funding this contract, there's a 30-day out clause. So we can stop the contract at any point if we feel we're not getting the adequate services, or if there's a funding issue.
Well, yeah, I'm sure we'll get adequate services, clearly, with everything you just listed. That's not the concern. I think the concern would be the funding. If I'm looking at the numbers correctly, which I think I'm a math teacher, this isn't difficult math, but it's not exactly adding up. But moreover is what I'm concerned about is that we get tied to these contracts now. We say yes now, and then later it's like, let's try and figure this out, instead of really thinking it through now of how are we going to fund this, and then not in December think, we said yes on July 5th, but we really weren't quite sure what we were going to do with this. So, I mean, that's all I'm saying. I'm not saying that, it's nothing against Delta. I'm sure they do phenomenal. Everything you listed, that's fantastic, clearly, and we need it. I'm not saying we don't need Delta, but I'm not sure I think before we say yes, I mean, if I'm my own personal budget, I'm not going to go to Rome and pay for the trip, and then when I get back, say, I don't have money for my mortgage tonight. I guess I'll figure that out. I don't know. I mean, maybe I'm looking at this incorrectly, but yeah, of course we're looking at it during budget season, but by that time, we've already said yes to the contract, and then we're going to figure this out. Instead of figuring this out and then looking at the contract, is what I would think. We already guaranteed $200,000 to Penn Strategies, and now another $315,000. That's $500,000. It's over $500,000.
Well, again, I would only suggest that we're talking about a contract that is needed for a $25 million project. It's an increase of $50,000 for next year, which can be, again, a 30-day out clause. But if you look at 80% of the city's budget, we have contracts in place through 2019, fire, police, public services.
Right.
So, we have close to probably $20 million already encumbered for 2019.
That's
So
my
I
point.
agree with you, that makes it difficult going into next year's budget when 80% of it's already under contract, so to speak. So, I mean, you bring up a big issue. I mean, and that's always a challenge of an ongoing budget, I guess.
Thank you. Mrs. Katz?
This does read from June to November, June 1st to November. And what it does say, and you're right, if you take the 17.5 and multiply that by 6 months, it does come up to 105,000, but this is half and half.
Right.
Half city, half RVT.
Right.
But what it does, and what the city really is going to be, for both RVT and the city, it's $52,500. So really, we're $2,500 over what
Right,
we're budgeted for.
Right.
And-
But
and
but
if
he's
you
accurate.
understand,
If you
yeah.
have 7 months, but we pay after a month's complete. So there's only going to be 6 payments this year.
Right, that's what this states.
But December will be, and I mean, they're not taking a month off, are they?
No. But that payment won't be until January next
Right,
year.
right.
But-
So
But,
it's-
I mean, in
you
terms
still
of
have to
cash
include it,
basis,
yeah.
it's only 6 months of,
Right, of this,
Of-
right, of this, I get that, yeah. I mean, I understood that. I was just saying, we can't not count December.
no, I understand that.
Right,
Yeah,
right,
I understand that.
A couple questions. One, on grants like the RACP grant, are administrative costs for administering the grant eligible expenses
for,
for administering the RACP grant?
it is eligible for match. You can't
It's
use the rack, it's a
Can't use the
one-for-one
dollars,
match.
But you can use the dollars that you're
Yes, so,
administering
yeah,
as a match.
if you, and that's exactly right, well, and the other thing I should say is that, which I failed to mention, was that most of that, if not all, will come from the local shares we obtain from various sources, the county, like Cumming Foundation, not the First Community Foundation, but now that we have like Cumming Foundation money in place, we could allocate all the money for Delta out of that, if need be, so there wouldn't be any cost to the city. But as, and you maybe didn't see the.
Quick question to clarify that before you move on. Are those funds from, you said it was from which foundation? The Visitors Bureau?
No, like Cumming, well, the Cumming Economic Development Foundation
Yeah,
was
that's
closely
right.
tied to the chamber at
Right.
one point. When they raised
Right.
money, it went into the
So
foundation.
Question is, so the redevelopment foundation funds, are they residing in the general fund?
It's a grant to the city, yes.
That will go into the general fund, or will they go
Correct.
into other funds?
It'll go into this, well, it's not going to go in the general fund, it's going to go in the treasury fund,
Yep.
because it's allocated specifically to one purpose.
So when we see budgeting for 2019, will we see that fund this year? I mean, I don't remember seeing that in our budget books. Probably because we usually don't have money going through there.
Yeah, you'll see it in the capital budget. We
Okay.
show those, yeah, we show those, if it's not in the general fund, if it's outside of a general fund obligation, you'll see it in the capital budget.
So one potential solution, although I know that you and the administration are still, and will be for the coming months, and we're happy to participate in this process at any point along the way, you're developing the financial plan, the budgeting plan for next year.
Right.
And will be ongoing through the remainder of this year. But one potential solution to I think the discussion, as I heard it between you and Mr. Slaughter, is it boils down to we have to find a way to increase the consulting budget by $50,000 next year.
That's
If-
correct.
Assuming this passes.
But
And so to finish, one potential solution on how to make that possible is to have that $50,000 increase be funded, at least for 2019, out of the redevelopment foundation funds.
Correct. That money is available, and if you look at the most recent matrix that we provided to ERC, and this will be a presentation at the next council meeting, you'll see that not only like Cumming Foundation, but we have $235,662 for professional fees allocated from the county grant.
Okay.
So I think it's safe to say, I haven't worked out the total, how to allocate all the specific funds to match,
Sure.
but I can safely say there's enough money available that the city, the entire $100,000 of Delta will not come out of the general fund.
Which, then that's even then better.
So in
One
other
step
words,
back-
the obligation of the general fund to consulting fees will be reduced by $50,000.
$50,000, which I think, I'm not speaking to anything Mr. Slaughter might have to say about whether or not we should be spending this kind of money over a 2-year period on consultants. That's not the issue. The issue is how do we pay for it? And I think if that ends up being the solution, either the increase of $50,000 or the total Delta budget of about $100,000, that I think would resolve his concern about how to pay for the increase.
Right, and I should have probably been better prepared to say that that'll come out of non-general fund funds.
And I know these are moving both from a project standpoint, all these projects, and from a budgeting standpoint for the city's budget. They're moving, at this point of the year, they're all moving around. So I wouldn't expect to have a final answer. But if one or the other of those solutions it ends up being the answer, I think that does address your concern, right, Mr.
I
Slaughter?
think Councilman Allison, I think you have the sheet. If you look under local match, if you look under like Cumming County, you'll see down at the bottom there, Professional fees, $235,662.
By the way, would it be possible to get copies of those for the other
Absolutely.
4 members?
Yeah, I'll give
Thank
it to you tonight, yeah.
Thanks.
So, I mean, if you have the same sheet, you'll see that amount of money is available for professional fees. So, I should have said up front that it will not come from the general fund, and that probably would have been a better description of what's going
Yeah,
on.
I think to that point,
Yeah, go ahead, Mr. Ellis.
Mr. Klein from Delta, when he presented this spreadsheet and talked about the different funding streams, made a point that this particular project, the Old City and Revitalization and Connectivity Project, has met with great approval from all these different entities that provide the funding stream. And he said, we don't just have in place one stream for a purpose. A lot of places we have 2 or more that are dedicated to the different purposes. I wish everybody could have a copy of this as well tonight, but that are a part of that project, and the professional services is at the bottom. And it does give us some latitude, because I think we all share Councilman Slaughter's concerns about this upcoming budget, and, you know, that 50,000 is indeed a large increase considering what we're looking at in general, so.
Between First Community Foundation, Lycoming Foundation, Lycoming County, we have over $2.3 million in local that have been committed to this project, which is unbelievable. So we do have a lot of flexibility and latitude, and the strategy of how we allocate these dollars needs to be finished and then presented to council. But I can, again, commit to that Delta's portion, the city portion of Delta's contract does not have to come out of the general fund.
Can I finish up a couple other questions? And I know one of the challenges in all of this is because RVT had been bearing the burden of that cost, it was putting too heavy a burden, I think, on the budget of RVT, and that was one thing that was a goal that we had been discussing on how to make sure that that was equitable across the different departments of the city, given that this is both a transportation, the consultancy is both for transportation funding as well as economic development in particular. How much was the prior contract with RVT for Delta services?
It was a little bit more. I think it was $18.5 a month.
Okay, so, and it seems like their level of activity is increasing, not decreasing, even though the cost per month is decreasing slightly.
Well, we have the synergy between the city and the college because they do have a contract as well with the college, because the college got a $2 million RACB grant with the assistance of Delta. Excuse me. So the synergy of us and Lycoming College working together, you know, we should see a reduction in the cost because the administrative costs are being spread over, you know, more than just the city and RVT. The reason that the suggested split.
If you could pause it just a second, because of what you just said, I need to ask the solicitor if that creates any problems for me in terms of conflict. What he just said about this Delta working for both the city and my employer.
No, I mean, it's a non-exclusive agreement, so, I mean, they can work with it.
Okay, I just wanted,
That's not gonna be.
better to ask.
That doesn't create a conflict.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure because, you know, to be transparent in that way. Okay, go back to finish what you were saying.
No, the reason that this is a logical time that the city gets involved is because we've completed Trade and Transit 2. The RACB grant is pretty much almost completed, just other than retainage, and so the services that we need are more been diminished, I guess. So, and the need for more on the city side has increased. So, you know, logically looking at it, this is what we felt was a fair way to do this in terms of the needs of both RVT and the city.
And we focused a lot on the expenses to the city general fund and other sources of funds around this project. The one question we haven't asked is this a sustainable number, then half of the 17.5 a month for then RVT's budget going into 2019?
Yes, it's a logical, in fact, as I said, typically hiring a consulting firm just to administer one RACP grant is pretty demanding as well. It's around $50,000.
I understand
so-
the work it does. What I'm saying is, can the RVT
Yes.
budget handle the, whatever it is, 8750 a month over the course of?
Yes, that will come out of our planning grants, and so, yeah, that's a number that works very well and can be justified in terms of level of activity.
Okay, thank you very much. Mrs. Katz, do you still?
Yeah, I have two questions. Not questions. One is something that we discussed at finance, and one is, with all the funding that's coming through, is anything stated that we cannot use any of the funding for consultant fees? Does any of that come, because some of the grants, sometimes they state that.
No, that's a good question, and that's why when you do a RACP application, any kind of professional fees, whether it be architect, construction management services, planning, or Delta-type services, they're eligible in terms of match. So you can't use the RACP funds to pay for it, but they are eligible to match what you use the RACP funds for. So, for example, college just got a $2 million RACP grant. They're going to use that for site work, preparatory work for their building. And so any professional fees that they spend can match that $2 million because they have to have match of $4 million, and that's typically architectural fees, professional fees are typically how you match a RACP grant.
Okay. And the other thing we discussed at finance is, with the budget coming up, we wanted to see line items for consultant fees with a breakdown. That's one of the things that we did discuss. So we know exactly what we're paying and who gets what and is given to whom. So that's one thing that we do want to see in the.
Well, most of it's going to go to
upcoming
John Grado, so you can just,
I know.
no, I'm just kidding.
That's one we were interested in.
Yes,
Yeah.
that's good.
He has a huge travel budget that he's proposing.
Yeah.
Other comments or questions, Mr. Allison?
And one other thing we wanted to make clear was any grants, other grants that are applied for are not going to be in competition with anything that has to do with the levy. We don't want any competing grants there because the levies, there isn't going to be an East Third Street Gateway project if the levy's not certified. And just to refer back to this spreadsheet one more time, we got this in our ERC meeting last week, and in the presentation from the college and some of the other consultants that were here. And it's a 22, at this point, $22.9 million project. 12.3 million of that is Lycoming College. So the rest of it it's all funded from these grant streams or other entities, like things that PennDOT is doing or that. There's no general fund, city general fund money, not a dollar dedicated to this. So I think it's important for people to understand that. That's why Mr. Flynn was so exuberant about the success we've had in financing this project up to this point. It's a good foundation, but we haven't had to commit any general fund money to it, other than what we did in the beginning when we partnered with the college and the county to finance the study that was done to get the whole thing kicked off.
It was $25,000.
$25,000. But, so we've parlayed that $25,000 into a $23 million project so far. So that was a good investment.
And just to reiterate something we talked about a couple of weeks ago, it's a new model for economic development that we started talking about 5 years ago. And that model is in partnership between the city and, you know, the county and the state and the federal government and all of those entities. But with, in this case, a partnership with a college, that the city's infrastructure and the money that the city is managing through these grants that we're getting successfully is going exclusively, and maybe I'm missing some pennies one way or the other, but exclusively into infrastructure, you know, roads and streetscapes and sidewalks and sewers and things like that. And that it's not going into, the money that we're managing is not going to the college. The money we're managing is not going to a private developer. Instead, it's going into infrastructure. And then that investment is leveraging that investment and then the college's investment, those two investments, that we hope to see over the next few years leveraging other spillover positive economic development, or think of it as the first dominoes of revitalizing through economic development that east end of the city. And so hopefully from $25,000 of city general fund investment that's now turned into $22 million of infrastructure investment and college investment in that area of town, then it, hopefully in another 2, 3, 4, 5 years, we'll be able to say that that $25,000 of city's taxpayer money will turn into $50 or $100 million of total investment in that part of town, because now then the private developers come in and say, we can make $1 and we can benefit the city at the same time. And that will be a true measure of success. So we're 25,000, what's the multiplier there, Joe? 1,000 times our investment at this point? 22 million divided by 25,000. Yeah, we have a return on investment of 1,000 times. Maybe Mr. Slaughter can help me out.
Got it.
Okay. So let's get a 1,000,000-time return on our investment or something along those lines. It's not a full success yet, but man,
No.
this new approach, new for the city anyway, new approach to economic development seems to be working at the moment.
And we're hopeful that in other forms, the same format can be applied to other parts of the city that need redevelopment or new development in different ways, revitalization on different scales. But if we have a model that works, we'll go with it.
So if I could start over, I would say that I'm pleased to present this contract because Delta and our economic development team has leveraged over $2 million in local funds and millions of dollars in state funds without any dollars from the general fund. I guess I should have said it that way, maybe.
$25,000
Well,
or
some.
5 years ago. $25,000 about 5 years ago.
Okay.
And half of 315,000.
Yeah. We're getting some real money.
Yeah. I mean, I just have
Mr. Slaughter.
just one final point. I mean, I just want to be clear, I'm not taking anything away from Delta or the economic development or the college or, I mean, I fully understand. I don't want to make it appear as though that's not what that was not my point at all. I would just, I mean, the mayor more than a few times has said that, you know, layoffs are a real possibility and $50,000, $100,000 here and there could equate to real jobs come December. So I just, you know, I know you're saying that 25,000 to 22 million, and that is fantastic. I'm not, that was not my point, you know, but I was just saying that, you know, 315,000 divided by 2 is real general fund money. It was the only point that I was making, that I was concerned of where that
Well,
was
like,
coming
like
from.
I should have said at the beginning, is that the dollars allocated from the city for this contract are coming from funds we successfully secured already, non-general
Yeah,
city
And
funds. So-
Mr. Slaughter, just to let you know, I wasn't aiming that discussion.
No, I know, I just wanted to make sure I wasn't aiming at you guys.
We just got
I'm
off
very
track.
happy to hear that we're going to be able to
Yeah, I am too.
address your concern, because next year's general fund budget is going to be a
Yeah, it's very-
real challenge.
Right, right.
And and to be able to manage this piece of increased costs without going directly to the
Without
city
one
taxpayer.
penny from
We know.
the
Right.
general fund.
Yeah, no, that's really important.
Right,
I
We need to
had
watch
sort
every
of, in my
$1,000.
mind, turned the page once we found a solution to, hey, we can celebrate that we're doing a pretty good job here on this thing.
No, I'm glad to hear not one penny is going to come out of the general fund next year to pay this contract. So I made note
Well,
of that.
you know, and if we had to take any money in the general fund, Adam said he'd charge it on his credit card, so we're safe.
No, I'm just going to remind December.
We should take the first,
I'm going to let you know, I'm going to remind you that December.
We're going to memorialize this.
any other comments from members of council? Mayor?
Yes, thank you. Good evening. I'd just like to say, just like to echo some of the comments, for $25,000, just the endless possibilities we have to add additional dollars to our tax base. But not only that, in regards to this model, in 2019, the work will begin once again in regards to Park Avenue, and we'll be able to create the same type of synergy and alliance with University of Pittsburgh. So hopefully this will not be the last. We'll have Park Avenue, and we'll be looking at other projects as well. So thank you.
Glad you're on board as well. If there are no other comments from members of council, Mrs. Frank on the resolution, please.
Mrs. Katz?
Yes.
Mr. Slaughter?
Yes.
Mr. Allison?
Yes.
Dr. Williamson?
Yes, and the resolution carries. Thank you, Mr. Nicholas.
Thank you.
Next item on the agenda is a resolution to approve a grant agreement between the foundation and the city, or, I'm sorry, grant application to the foundation. Mrs. Frank, please.
Resolution to approve a grant application to the First Community Foundation Partnership of Pennsylvania for the Brandon Park Bandshell Improvement Project.
Thank you. Can I have a motion and a second to approve this resolution?
So move.
Second.
Hear a motion and a second. Ms. Young, how are you this evening?
Fine, thanks. Good evening. Council may recall that in March of this year, we applied to the state for a historic preservation grant for the renovations to the Brandon Park Bandshell. We did receive notification that the city did not receive that grant. However, after an initial submission to the First Community Foundation about this project, we were invited to submit a full grant application. So we're going to request to the foundation $250,000. This grant does not require a match, but we are going to propose to contribute $110,000 of 2019 CDBG funds. We already have a commitment from Lycoming County for $20,000, and the total project cost is $380,000, and the application is due on July 15. The scope of work hasn't changed from the state grant application. It includes providing ADA accommodations, including a lift, new toilets, and railing modifications. The structural repairs include repairing the wood floor, roof replacement, repointing of the brick, and interior dome structural renovations. Reynolds Construction has provided the cost estimate, and if you have any specific questions about the scope of work, I would refer you to Adam or Joe. And this grant application was reviewed by the Public Works Committee.
Thank you. Mrs. Katz.
Yes, this was reviewed by Public Works, and it was approved with full, oh my gosh, I can't even talk tonight. Positive recommendation, full body of council. This is something that has been, we wanted to see this done for a couple of years at this point. A couple of things that really need to be done are the toilets that are in the bandshell itself. They are really in bad shape. The lift is vitally important because for handicapped people, they cannot get up on the stage. So this is vitally important that this is done. We were disappointed that we didn't get the other grant, but at least we're going after another one and get this, at least get this in the process. And it sounds positive that we will get this funding. We have had questions from people about the use of the toilet facilities in the park. What we're planning on doing, what Streets and Parks are doing, is trying to do the old bandshell with toilets there. The toilets in that bandshell will not be open to the public on a daily basis. This will only be open for the events that are being performed in the bandshell itself. So we are working on another solution to what is a problem in the park. So hopefully this grant comes through, hopefully this can get started then. Again, the lift is, I think, one of the most important things that has to be accomplished with this. And there's so much that has to be done in the band shell, but when you realize how many handicapped people cannot get up on that stage, this is important. So let's, hope this goes through.
Thank you. Any comments or questions? Mr. Ellis?
When did we submit that grant to the state? I forget.
It was March of 2018.
Okay.
Yeah, and I think we got our letter mid-June. So we were happy that we even got a letter, actually.
It's record turnaround for them.
Yes.
Anything else?
No, that's it. Thanks.
Did we get any feedback on, in response in that letter?
Well, that was actually a
on the
question at
merits?
Public Works, too. No, I think it's a highly competitive grant. That's the reputation that it has. I think they may have had some larger structures, maybe of some historic value. That's all I can think, is that it's just highly competitive, and it just wasn't.
Sure. Often the case for these kind of grants, but sometimes you do get feedback on grant applications, and, as you know, those can be useful as you write the next round. If there are no further comments or questions, Mrs. Frank on the resolution, please.
Mrs. Katz?
Yes.
Mr. Slaughter?
Yes.
Mr. Allison?
Yes.
Dr. Williamson?
Yes, and the resolution is approved. Next
Thank
item on
you.
the, thank you very much. Next item on the agenda is a resolution of the authorizing a PennDOT to request a railroad crossing alteration. Mrs. Frank, please.
A resolution of the Council of the City of Williamsport, Lycoming County, authorizing PennDOT to request railroad crossing alternations at Chestnut Street pedestrian crossing from the Pennsylvania Public Utility Commission.
Thank you. Can I have a motion and a second on this resolution?
Second.
Hearing a motion and a second. Mr. Weiner, how are you this evening?
Good evening, very good, thank you. How about you?
Good.
This is a resolution authorizing PennDOT to represent the city. Unfortunately, the city can't represent themselves with the Public Utility Commission. It all has to be done through the state. They're looking to do upgrades at the pedestrian crossing at the foot of Chestnut Street. It would be signal upgrades, signage, lights. It would be all funded through the state, pending your authorization of this resolution. It would be zero cost to the city at all. The pedestrian crossway is used quite a bit, so to upgrade the signals would be definitely a benefit to us.
Thank you very much.
And it went to Public Works.
Thank you, Mrs. Katz.
Yes, this came to us, and it was passed with a positive resolution here. One of the things that we didn't ask you is, how did this come about? Did PennDOT come to you?
PennDOT reached out to
Nobody
us.
complained about this?
Nope. Nope, it was something that originally, couple days before I went on vacation, I received a letter, contacted PennDOT, was told by Steve Mutchler, I believe is who it was, that, this take a little bit of time, this is kind of slow moving, not sure we're gonna get the funding. I get back from vacation, have a message on my machine to call them right away. It was, hey, we have to get this moving fast, the funding is coming through, I just found out.
And they're going to start on this, did they give you a start date?
They were tentatively looking at the fall, but it all depends on the PUC.
Great thing is that it's an upgrade and it's not costing us any money, which is fantastic. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? Speaking of not costing us any money, I'm hopeful about the answer to this question. We would maintain the upgraded crossing.
Yes.
Will that cost us more money over time than what is currently there?
No.
Okay. So oftentimes we think, oh, it's free now, but then, 20 years down the road, it costs us $1 bazillion. We have that problem all the time, don't we?
Yes.
All right, if there are no other comments or questions, then Mrs. Frank on the resolution, please.
Mrs. Katz?
Yes.
Mr. Slaughter?
Yes.
Mr. Allison?
Yes.
Dr. Williamson?
Yes, and the resolution is approved. Thank you, Mr. Reiner. Next item on the agenda is a certificate of appropriateness for 320 Elmira Street.
Yes,
Mr.
good
Girardi?
evening, President Williamson and members of council. What you have before you, I have two certificate requests tonight. The first one is for 320 Elmira Street, the Liberty Arena. They're requesting to place two signs on their building on Elmira Street. One would be a 4-foot by 1 foot by 10-inch high sign. The colors and so forth are attached. You'll see an elevation of it with the imposed picture of the sign above it. This is for on the Elmira Street, there's two entrances. One's for Fly World, the other one's for Liberty Arena. Fly World's already has been identified with signage. This one is to identify the entrance coming off Elmira into Liberty Arena. The other one is window signage, and the reason why we consider this being a little signage is because of the fact that it does do some advertisements for the owner. That is also, I show attached, to show the 5 panes of glass that it's attached to the rear. And also on the other side is the sign, parties are better here, showing what they offer on that side. Those signs are up, but they are covered at the request of the owner and myself. I asked the owner to put up the contractor who installed them. In other areas, they call this window art. They don't require permits. If this was something that didn't have any wording on it or any description of anything, it's considered window art. It's not a signage. And the reason why it's in front of you is because it's in the central business district. So the contractor made an error by placing these up there. These are window decals, so it's not like you can just take them off and set them aside and put them back up. Once you take them down, they're ruined. So I had them cover them, which they did at my request, and no one saw them. They're not up or anything at this point. I do have representatives here if you have any questions of them or myself on any of these signs.
Thank you. Can I have a motion and a second to approve the certificate of appropriateness?
So move.
Second.
Hear a motion and a second. Comments or questions? Mr. Ellis?
We don't have any other item or signs like this or art like this in the,
No, it's something I think we would need to want to address in our ordinance, because like I said, if these were regular window decals in a Washington Boulevard business, they could be placed up at any time. And there's nothing we can do as an administration or as a council to prevent them from going, if you wish not to have them. I know if you go down the Golden Strip, you see Xfinity has them up on the one new building. All their windows have the big Xfinity signs. It's basically called window art. We don't have a definition for it in our zoning ordinance. Same thing with mosaic type of artwork. You'll have one of them coming in 2 weeks. The reason why it's coming in front of you is because it's in the central business district. If it was outside this area, we would just have to allow it to happen. There's another mosaic that wants to go up on Washington Boulevard on the whole entire side of a building, which is black and white. It's not advertisement. It's art, it's painting, it's decals, so it's not really covered under our ordinance. It's something new that's going around. It's been around for a while, but I mean, for us in this area, it's something newer.
okay, but it does fall under our sign ordinance now?
Yes, because it is advertisement. He's advertising things that are associated with that facility. So it's like an advertisement sign.
Right. And I'm not familiar enough with the sign ordinance to know if it doesn't address any details.
There is a section in our ordinance, it's covered, and I copied it, just so you have it. I'm more than happy to give everybody a copy of this later if you wish. There's a section in there where it says under Central Business District sign guidelines, it's A through L. Out of A through L, there's only really one thing in here which, if you look at it, it probably does address this, where it says signs should not cover windows, cornices, and other decorative features, okay? This does cover some windows. It does not cover all the windows, okay? But that's really the only thing out of 15 items that maybe it does not meet the requirement, okay? And again, that's in that, like I said, it's in our ordinance under Central Business District signage. And that's when I usually go through, and when I come with a sign, I usually say, yes, it meets all the sign requirements. Okay, this one typically meets all of them but one minor one, and that's where, just wanted to point that out to you.
Mr. Ellis? are you-
No, I'm done.
Okay.
Yeah.
One of the things, obviously, you and I have talked a lot about the downtown design ordinance for a long time, and then the signage ordinance. When that revision was done, the decision was to kind of cut out revisions of the sign ordinance, thinking we would get back to that.
Right.
And have a full sign ordinance review for the city as a whole, and of course apply whatever, you know, whether it be the same for central business or not, that would be a part of it. And so even the language you just had is should. Clearly, we have other window signs in downtown.
Correct.
But they don't cover the entire window.
Correct.
But there's no prohibition because it says should as opposed to shall not.
Right.
And so every once in a while, when we've had these conversations, we've said, we need to get together.
Correct.
At the council and administration and have a comprehensive review of our sign ordinance because it is woefully outdated. It's probably 25, 30 years old, and obviously there have been many innovations in signage over that time period. So I think my answer to what Mr. Allison was asking is there's a lot our sign ordinance doesn't cover.
That is correct.
And probably not this in particular.
And I think if you notice too, when you go through those 13, again, when you go to the central business district, you have different types of structures in that central business district. If you look through this, a lot of these deal with older buildings. They're dealing with the type of wood carved signs. They prefer to see a wood carved sign than a neon sign, and that makes a lot of sense if you're talking to Genetti, you're talking downtown Williamsport, you have a lot of these older buildings. Via Bella, does it really apply to that? Do you want wood carved signs on the Holiday Inn and the Hampton Inn? Typically not. To most of those signs right now, they're newer buildings, and most of those signs are channel lettering and so forth. So again, I think we need to address it, maybe look at the area and define really central business district, maybe close it in a little bit more and say this is the area we definitely want to be strict with some of these signs. Other areas outside, maybe be a little bit more lenient. We have the Gateway now going down that area. Most of those buildings in that area are all one-story and more modern buildings. So I think we definitely need to address some of the central business sign requirements and actually some of just the requirements in the central business district.
One of the things we can talk about offline, but maybe if you're willing to lead such an effort, we could appoint an ad hoc group of people interested in, let's just focus on signage. And, you know, it could be others from the administration as well, depending on what the mayor's preferences are. But clearly, we could have a council ad hoc committee and really dig deep into that and get it done for the whole city that might have zone-specific variations.
Right, right. I have no problems in doing that. I'd be more than happy to talk to Mr. Narr. I mean, him and I will set something up and get something going. We just went through the regulations concerning parking with the Planning Commission, trying to revise that. We're almost through that. That'll be coming through council here probably in the next couple of weeks. It'd be a good time to start it all over and start the discussion and go through that.
And maybe what makes sense is have a couple of Planning Commission representatives, 3 council members, and you and Mr. Narr get together and, you know, over the next 6 months, knock that out.
Absolutely.
Something along those lines.
Yep.
Sounds great. Mrs. Katz.
When I first looked at this, it was like, whoa, okay, this is really colorful. It's not signage that you see downtown. But on the other hand, when you go down on Myra Street, nobody really knew what this business was.
That's
you know,
correct.
and so therefore, this is a signage that at least, this is, you know, this explains what's in that building. Prior to that, it didn't explain what was in that building.
Correct.
You just thought it was whatever.
Right.
And it is colorful, and again, does it fit into what is the downtown business district? I don't know, but what it does do for that building itself, this is appropriate as far as I can see, because you do have to advertise what you are doing with your business.
Right.
And this is what this does.
Any other comments or questions? Hearing none, Mrs. Frank. Oh.
I was just going to say that in particular with this signage, I feel a little more comfortable with it, I guess, in the window spaces for some reason, maybe just because it'll be easy enough for them to change out should they decide they're looking for a different motif later. Do you know what I mean? It's a little less of a commitment. Anyway, and you're right, Mrs. Katz, I do think that it will help convey what's going on in the building a little better. It would be great in the long run maybe to see all the elements of that building be a slightly more attractive element of our community, but in the short term, I think this conveys at least what's inside, so that's good.
Thank you. Without any other comments, Mrs. Frank?
Ms. Mealy?
Yes.
Mrs. Katz?
Yes.
Mr. Slaughter?
Yes.
Mr. Allison?
Yes.
Dr. Williamson?
Yes, and that certificate is approved. Next item is a certificate for 140 Via Bella Street. Mr. Jordan.
Yes. This is for Williamsport Inn LLC. What you have before you is a request there. Every so many years, I think it's about every 10, 12 years, they readdress the company. The main company comes through and wants to do a new front on the building to dress it up. What you have before you is an elevation of the building itself. And on that elevation, you'll see, if you look through the description of what's going to be the different colors, I have also the 3 colors that they're using, which will be basically earth tones, which does fit our central business district. The main body is the gray, okay?
Which gray is it?
The first one, this one right here.
No, I mean, what's the name of the gray? You know, we have
A
that
new.
tradition.
It is a new, well,
new
actually,
gray.
I prefer you to say those,
Oh, well,
okay?
A new gray.
Natural Linens one, Smokehouse, and a new gray. They're pretty easy ones.
Yeah, a lot easier than sometimes.
But the new gray is the body of the building, okay? That's where you're gonna see the most colors. The other ones are the trims around the windows, and the cornice up top is the darker. What you see is the bottom, they have an Eldorado stone, and I have a sample of that. That's what the bottom stone's gonna look like if you were to bring it up, if you want to take a closer look at it. It's basically, again, it's the colors that, though do fit what we are requesting in central business, it could be yours. It's pretty heavy. And both of these were reviewed by the Planning Commission, did recommend for approval to council.
Thank you very much. Any comments or questions?
So it's a basic reskinning of the structure is what you're saying?
What's that again?
It's a basic reskinning of the structure?
Yes, basically, yep, that's what they're doing. They do it about every 10, 12 years. Hopefully in 10, 12 years, I won't be presenting the next colors to you, someone else will be.
Oh, geez, Joe. Say so. We all plan to be here.
But, yes, so, again, I think it fits what's down there. It looks good, it's a nice color, and they would like to proceed with this probably tomorrow if they get their approval tonight.
Any other comments or questions? And just to be clear, it's not changing brands or anything like that? that
No.
might concern people?
Nope.
Thank you. Mrs. Frank, on the certificate.
Ms. Mealy?
Yes.
Mrs. Katz?
Yes.
Mr. Slaughter?
Yes.
Mr. Allison?
Yes.
Dr. Williamson?
Yes, and that certificate is approved. Next item on the agenda is accept for filing. We have
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Jordy. We have the Public Works meeting minutes of February 13th and April 24th, 2018, Public Safety minutes of April 24th, 2018, ERC meeting minutes of April 7th, 2018, and Controller's Report of May 2018. Can I have a motion and a second to accept those for filing?
So moved.
Second.
Hear a motion and a second. Comments or questions? Hearing none, Mrs. Frank?
Ms. Mealy?
Yes.
Mrs. Katz?
Yes.
Mr. Slaughter?
Yes.
Mr. Allison?
Yes.
Dr. Williamson?
Yes, and those are accepted for filing. Next item is announcements. The next regularly scheduled city council meeting will be held on Thursday, July 19th at 7:30 here in council chambers. Other upcoming meetings include on Monday, July 9th. Said 19th, right? Yeah. On Monday, July 9th at noon is the Planning Commission meeting, and at 4 p.m. is the Recreation Committee. On Tuesday, July 10th at 3:30 is the ERC. On Wednesday, July 11th at 3:30 is the O&E Pension Board. Monday, July 16th at 5:30 p.m. is the Government Study Commission. Tuesday, July 17th at 10 a.m. is the Blighted Property Review Board. 1 p.m. is the Finance Committee. 2:30 p.m. is Public Works. 3:30 p.m. is Public Safety, and 6:30 p.m. is HARB. Might as well bring lunch and stay all day, and dinner, I guess. Wednesday, July 18th at 4 p.m. is Charter Commission, and Thursday, July 19th at 10:30 a.m. is the Zoning Hearing Board, and at 4 p.m. is the Board of Health. That brings us to the end of our agenda. Are there any comments by members of council? Hearing none. Oh, Mr. Slaughter.
I just want to thank all the backyard broadcasting and the streets and parks and everybody else that helped out with the fireworks were fantastic. Yesterday I took my family down and it was a great time. The fire, police, everybody. I know the mayor, everybody put it together. It was a nice night, and we enjoyed ourselves, and so I just want to thank everybody that went into doing that. So, thank you.
Any other comments? Hearing none. Mayor, your administration? All right, thank you. Any comments from the general public? Welcome back, and your name and address again for the record, please.
Joe Fioretti, 37 Elder Street, Williamsport here. Just a little input. I'm disabled. Of course, I live on a really tight budget, and I heard talks of budgets for 2019 coming up there. I want to thank you guys for one thing, the council asking questions during, nobody take none of this personal, during Mr. Nichols' presentation there, like for Delta and then consulting and stuff like that. It kind of worries me sometimes, though, when I hear you're going to pull it out of another fund that's sat in there, a rainy day fund, whatever it might be. It's almost sounding to me like there's extra money. I know I don't have any extra money. They usually go somewhere. But as a disabled person here in the city living, I paid all my bills for this month, and I got a budget every 2 weeks. And this is the honest God truth. I got $136 for groceries for the next 2 weeks. I got to trim the fat wherever I can. And as the mind and the budget going on here, when you're thinking about that, trying to think about, trimming the fat where you can. I did also want to throw in on the band shell. I heard talk on that, $380,000. And I'm sure the historical value of that band shell is priceless. What's the actual value of that band shell? $380,000. I could think you almost could build a brand new one for that kind of money. And there again, does it all have to be done this year? I'd like to have new carpeting, new windows, a roof, and everything else. But under my budget, I would have to say I want to do this year, that next year, and then plan accordingly. Just something else to think of. One more thing I want to throw in there again. Don't take any of this personal. 3rd Street revitalization, streetscapes, and everything else I'm hearing about. You're talking about a 5-block area, $22 million for 5 blocks of this city. There's a lot of other places that are rotten in this city. Well, this is being taken care of. It's going for like Cumming College, a private entity or private college. 3/4 of these people in this city couldn't go to that college. We couldn't afford it. Again, something to think about. Park Avenue, they're talking about that being the next project, getting money from UPMC for grants. Remember, grants come from somewhere. They come from the state, the federal government. It comes out of our tax money. We're all paying that. It's not just money on a tree growing somewhere. But I won't take up any more of your time, but thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Other comments from the general public? Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Second.
A motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you.